how to make a layered tower fabric flower. So you'll be learning how to make this flower right here. So let's go over what you need. You'll need some basic round templates that you can find in the manual, or you can create some yourself depending on how big you want your flower. But this is how big I want mine. You'll also need needle and thread, some beads or some buttons to go in the center, a pen for tracing, a little lighter and candle, or matches and candle, a pair of scissors, and some different types of fabric. I'm using organza, which is 3 different colours of organza, tulle, and also satin, blue satin on top. So let's go ahead and start tracing our first template, and I'll show you with this satin here, if you're using fabric, that you can see the pattern when you trace. Then you can use a pen. For the organza, I'll show you how to do it, how you can trace it on. You don't need to trace it on, and you need 2 of each size for each fabric. I found this fabric in the cupboard. It is an old shirt. But I like the material, the fabric, the feel of it, so I kept it. So 2 of each size. And once you have 2 of each size, then you can go ahead and start cutting. Now for this one we'll be singeing the edges, so it doesn't matter if it's not straight, as long as it's a circular shape. So I've just cut out, you can see here I've cut out all the circles, and just put those aside and continue to cut out the other circles from the organza. Now for this part you can use pins, or you can just hold the template in place while you cut a circle shape. So with your organza, just lie it out flat and then fold it over so that you can put the templates on, and then instead of having to cut out individual ones, you can just cut out 2 at a time. Okay, and of course you have to, after you've folded it over, then you just cut it so that it's easier when you go to cut out the separate squares. We'll be cutting out squares so that it's easier to cut out circles, if that makes any sense. You'll see in a minute. So put your templates on top of the organza, and remember we've got 2 layers of organza here, and just cut between each template, making sure you have enough organza to fit the template. Just like that. You can either pin the template onto the organza, or you can just hold onto it tightly. You can do this by pressing it down on the table and just lifting the side that you're cutting. And remember that it doesn't need to be straight, it doesn't need to be a clean cut. It just has to be a circular shape because we'll be singeing the edges. we're going to do this also for the other templates. So it is easier with a pin, but if you don't have any pins lying around, you can of course do it the way that I showed you before, by just holding it to the table and lifting the edge that you are going to be cutting. So now that we have all of those, you can go ahead and start cutting out with all the other materials. You don't have to use the same materials as I have, but I found it quite nice, as I've used other materials. I've used lace as well, which is very pretty. Added lace into one of the flowers. So continue to just cut out all of the shapes from all of the materials that you have, making sure you have two of each size, but you have them all, set them up, because now we're going to start singeing all the side edges of the petals. And it's a good idea just to grab a bowl or a cup of water, just in case you have a little accident. So you see how I'm just singeing the edges. I'm not putting it on the flame, I'm putting it above. You need to find out where the heat rises and just hold it next to it. You can also shut all the windows or any doors that there might be a draft blowing the wind. And this is the organza. Now organza, it catches a light very easily, so I recommend to using, or actually having, a bowl of water. You can't see mine, but it's there, it's on the side. And once you've done all of those, like I have, it takes a wee while, and I'm going to just show you where, hold my hand up in front of where the heat rises. So there's a bit of a draft, I think, but I can't seem to find where the heat rises. You see there, that's a bit of a mistake that I've made, but it's still usable. I think some of those mistakes are it adds character, makes it much better and prettier. And you can see that the fabric is starting to curl, just like a petal. Now I've made a few extra petals with the tool, because I find that it drowns in all that organza. So if you want, you could have also used more satin, or you could use lace as well, add a bit of lace, and just start stacking with the largest petals first. So I've used the satin first, and then I've added organza, my organza layers, one of each, and then some tulle, and then start back again with the satin and then the organza, and continue to do this process until you've run out of fabric, or until you think it's pretty enough. So I've added 2 pieces of tulle there, and then a piece of satin, and then my coloured organza. And you can see it's starting to take shape. Now it's starting to become a tower, and I have to use my finger just to hold it down because it bounces back up and it falls apart. So using all of the pieces of tulle that I have, you might end up with just a few pieces of tulle left over if you've done the same as me and just made a few extra pieces of tulle. And then now is the fun part of putting it all together. So with the needle and thread, just thread the needle right through the middle and then back up the middle again, like I have done in this video. You can see here, making sure that you get every single petal. When you're done, just tie a knot. Now we're going to add the beads. I've used these tiny little blue beads that I found at the bead shop, and I'm going to use quite a few of them to make the centre of mine. It's very difficult, especially with these really tiny beads. You have to remember that if the beads don't fit on the needle, because they might be just a bit too tiny and the needle might be just a bit too thick, you can always use a smaller needle or find bigger beads. I was using the purple beads before, but of course they didn't fit on the needle, so I went back and found some blue beads. You don't have to use the beads with thread the beads on, you can also use a hot glue gun. And to use the hot glue gun, you just put a little tiny bit of glue in the middle and then sprinkle the beads on. Now I've just done exactly the same as what I have done with the 4-point star flower, fabric flower. Threaded the needle right down in between the middle of the beads, and then come right up back through the middle of those beads. It's quite difficult to see, but I've just threaded the needle back through the middle of the beads, and then threaded the needle on the side of the beads so that it will stay put, and it won't come off. So there you go. Snip off the thread, tie a knot, and you have snip off the excess thread, and there you have your beautiful layered tower fabric flower.